I'm going to tell you the whole story in about 3 minutes. Not actually the whole story, because then you wouldn't need to read the book, and it's a great one. And there's no way this book could be properly summed up that quickly. There's way too much that happens. Huck Finn knows how to have an adventure. A few things to be aware of. This book was written in the 1880s and based about 20 years earlier in the 1860s when slavery was still happening. This book is known as one of the great American novels, and it was written in vernacular, meaning the way Huck talks is the way the words are written. Well, this book is also based in the South, so Huck has a southern drawl. He also is very uneducated, so his grammar is not proper. The Adventures of Huck Finn is known as one of the greats because it gives such vivid descriptions of places and people. The book starts out with Huck Finn being civilized. Now, this is not the first book in which Huck Finn appears as a character. He was introduced to the world in the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Tom and Huck are best friends, and they like to cause trouble and go on adventures like most young boys do. Anyway, Huck is basically an orphan, his mother is dead, and his father is a drunk who is never around. Miss Watson took Huck in at the end of the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. She tries to make him dress and act like a gentleman. Huck usually prefers old ragged clothes because they're more comfortable. He's always complaining about wearing the nice clothes Miss Watson tries to get him to wear. Part of Huck's becoming civilized means that he has to go to school and follow rules. Huck does not really like being told what to do, but just as he is about to quit going to school, his dad shows up. Now, Huck does not really care for his dad because he is a drunk. His dad told him he didn't want Huck going to school. Therefore, Huck decided he was definitely going to stay in school. Tom and Huck find buried treasure in the Adventures of Tom Sawyer, so Huck has a great deal of money. Judge Thatcher is managing that money for Huck. Well, it just so happens that the only reason his dad came around is to get some of the money from Huck. Huck and Judge Thatcher come up with a plan that makes it so Huck doesn't have any money to give to his dad. Huck sells his fortune to Judge Thatcher for $1, but an agreement is made he can buy it back later. Now, Huck is still living with Miss Watson, who is a slave owner. One of the slaves is named Jim, and he frequently sees Tom and Huck getting into mischief. Jim will be an important character later on in the book. One day, Huck's dad decides to kidnap his son. Pap, as Huck calls him, takes Huck to an old rundown cabin in the woods by the Mississippi River. He locks him up there and leaves him. Sometimes Pap stays there with him, and sometimes he is gone. Remember, Pap is a drunk, and Huck devises a plan to use this to his advantage. Only his plan fails, and Huck is still trapped in the cabin. One day when Pap is gone, Huck comes up with another plan to get out. I won't tell you how because this is one of my favorite parts of the book. It shows Huck's creativity and how he thinks. I will tell you that a wild pig is killed in the process of Huck's escape, and Huck uses this pig to make people believe that he is dead. Huck decides that he will take the canoe he found a few days earlier when he was fishing with Pap and float down the Mississippi River, never to be seen again. He wants to get out of there and never come back because if he goes back to town, he'll have to be civilized again by Miss Watson, and his dad will find him eventually. So Huck sets off down the Mississippi River. He finds himself an island to hide on for a while, and this is where the main adventure begins. Huck quickly discovers he is not alone on the island. Remember the slave Jim? Well, he ran away because he wants to be free and be with his family. Now, Huck is not one for rules, remember, and if he turns Jim in, he would be turning himself in as well. So through a series of events, Jim and Huck set off down the river in with the canoe and a raft, so both of them could make their way to freedom. The adventure is just beginning. Huck and Jim run into a lot of trouble on the Mississippi River. There is an incident with a snake and a very superstitious Jim. There is also a whole mess with a fake duke and a fake lord who are really con men that get Jim and Huck into quite the pickle. These two travel with Jim and Huck for a while and put on a play as they move from town to town. The play is another one of my favorite parts of this book. There is another incident with a riverboat and robbers. Well, this is a little introduction to the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Hopefully this got you excited to read the book and see what happens to Huck.